I want to, since you're a podcaster, and obviously I kind of want to talk the talk with you. So,
Yeah.
how did you even start your podcast? Like, what made you get into this realm?
So, yeah, that the $1 million question. So I think COVID got everybody a little bit stir crazy.
Hmm.
Um, I've been I've been a sales rep driving on the road for a couple of years before that, and listening to podcasts. And I think we alluded to it earlier that everybody listens to Joe Rogan because that's the godfather of all podcasts. But I'd listen to Joe Rogan. I'd listen to Talking Elite Fitness. I'd listen to things that I'm passionate about, history and all these things. But I keep coming back to shows like Joe Rogan, um, because it was just conversations. It was just people talking. It was interesting conversations with people that I found were interesting, and some of them more so than others. Some of the conversations I was like, whatever. But I found it interesting. So I was like, it would be awesome to have a podcast one day.
Hmm.
I'd love to interview famous people and just kind of do everything. My podcast is really what I would consider CrossFit adjacent. If you listen to it anytime in the past, few months, you'd probably be like, no, it's completely a CrossFit podcast. Um, but but it's CrossFit adjacent because I don't just interview CrossFit people. But it started. I had a buddy of mine that kind of he did one, and he launched it on Anchor, and I was like, so I called him. I was like, dude, this is cool. You made a podcast. How did you do this? He's like, literally with my phone sitting in my closet.
Oh, stupid easy. I could tell you what I
Yeah,
started with. It was insane,
yeah.
insane.
Literally, I bought a microphone and didn't realize until like 6 episodes that it wasn't actually capturing anything. It was just the audio from my phone picking up. It's just like the first 6 to 7 episodes are just my phone.
Hmm.
Even though I was talking to a microphone, thinking it was actually working, but it wasn't, which is fun. But he started this podcast, and he was just talking about his training and talking about things that he did. And I've run into him at local competitions and things like that. We're friends, so I hit him up and I was like, "Hey, how did you do this?" And he told me, and I was like, "That is ridiculously easy."
Hmm. I started with the Anchor app, and
Yeah,
that's it's so easy, so
it's so
easy.
easy. So I still use Anchor. I'm
Yeah.
like, it's just easy. It's just fun and easy. You can do all sorts of stuff with it. So I started, the first, I think, 6 episodes was just me talking. I'd
Hmm.
have a couple of my buddies come on and we'd, talk a whole bunch of shit about whatever. And my very first episode is called Danny Spiegel is trying to kill me. Um, because I bought her 30-day abs like training program
Hmm.
and thought I was going to die. Like
Yeah.
it was that bad. I mean, it's a great program. Don't get me wrong, it's a fantastic program, but it's tough. So I was just talking, and then I reached out to a few people, and one of those people was Margot Alvarez. Reached out to her. Just I'd watched her on the Titan Games, obviously CrossFit Games athlete and things
Hmm.
like that. So Titan Games, CrossFit, I like all those things. Okay, cool, let's talk. And she has a wine company. How cool is that? So I messaged her on Instagram, and to my surprise, she responded. I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to." So we talked about it, and before we scheduled the episode. Before that episode aired, I ordered her wine, so I had her wine like there, so I could taste it. Like we could do a taste test right there on the podcast and talk about it and talk about the stories of her wine and all that. And I'm like, this is just so much fun.
Hmm.
From that point on, I never did this another solo. Well, I take that back. I did a couple solo episodes, but just like offbeat, like music type episodes and things like that. But from then on, I'm like, that's it. I'm only going to do this if I'm interviewing somebody, if I'm talking to somebody, because it's just fun. And went on to interview Sean and Tommy from Talking Elite separately because I wanted to get them separate
Those,
because
those
I'm like,
those guys are awesome, by the way.
oh,
Those
they're
great.
amazing. They're
Yeah.
amazing. Sean Woodland, punk rock bass player, like who knew? And we dove into that whole realm, and me and Tommy, like our episode was so long we had to cut it into 2 episodes because we did a whole fantasy football draft,
Hmm.
like a fantasy football draft. So like everybody was on the board, Hall of Fame players, like like an all-time fantasy draft. Like, so we just started having these fun conversations and not necessarily centered around CrossFit. Um, and I started reaching out to people, and to my shock, like again, like people that I have no business whatsoever talking to
Yep.
were like, sure, I'll come on the show. Yeah, I'll do it. Why not? So like Javier Colon, the very first winner of season 1 of The Voice, he came on the show. He's a phenomenal human being, like
Very
just
cool.
an amazing guy.
Yeah.
But he's a singer, so definitely nothing, CrossFit. I've had people from Broadway. I've had people from like television, the Forged and Fire show.
Hmm.
If you've ever seen that on the History Channel, had one of the judges from that show on there, and just started having these really cool conversations. And it's been a passion project. And there will be times where I have no episodes for like 3-4 months, and then all of a sudden I'll get in touch with somebody and they'll come on the show, and then I'll post a couple episodes. But it was just kind of a here and there. I'll post when I have interviews, and
Hmm.
it was just a passion project. It was just something on the side, just that I like to do for fun. And I honestly, I don't know how things happen for a reason, but the past couple of weeks have just been kind of flipped the podcast upside down, in all the best ways possible.
Hmm.
I was talking to you a little bit before we started recording, the whole thing with Wadapolooza. I was at Wadapalooza last year. I was just a podcaster. They gave us a stage. It sucked. And I'm not telling you anything Dylan Malitsky wouldn't tell you himself. He wasn't necessarily in charge of it. It was, somebody else was handling it. And it was a small little stage shoved in the food court area. There was no seating. We had a couple of fold out chairs, a couple of handheld microphones. We had no time slots. We basically just walked up, found a time slot, and then had to run around the venue to try and find somebody to interview. And it wasn't fun. It wasn't, I mean, we made it fun with the people that I got to talk to. Like I got to talk to Grant McCartney, and I got to talk to the Island Ninja from American Ninja Warrior,
Hmm.
Buttery Brooks, and all that stuff. Um, but I got to talk to a few people, but it wasn't as good as it could be. There was so much room for improvement. So this year, I reached out to Dylan. I've known Dylan for quite some time. I've known him since he was an MC for local competitions. So I reached out to Dylan. I was like, "Hey man, I would like to be an MC. I would like to be on the floor announcing heats, and kind of announcing the action and things like that. Um, but I also have this podcast. And last year, I'm going to be honest with you, the podcast stage wasn't that good. Here's like 5 ideas that I want to give you that would help you and your team make it a better situation."
Hmm.
um, and just gave him some of the ideas that I had on ways to make it better. And he goes, "That's awesome. Absolutely, I would love to have you as an MC. Or you can manage the podcast stage, take all the ideas that you have and make them yours and make it happen. But you have to pick one, because you can't do both. It's just not possible." He's like, "Don't answer me now. Think about it, and come back to me."
Hmm.
And the more and more I thought about it, I'm like, I would love to be an MC. I'd love to be in the middle of the action and on the floor. But man, I could really make this podcast thing pretty amazing if just we give it a little bit of something. We can make it so much better than what it was, and I think it would be beneficial. I think that would be more beneficial to everyone if I do that.
Yeah.
So I reached out to him and I said, "Hey, you know what? You're right. I'm going to do the podcast stage. I think that's the best bet for me." Um, he's like, "I totally want you to MC, but I think you're making a good choice. This is going to be a good place to go." This is 3, 4, 5 months before Wadapalooza. started putting my plans into motion, started working with the Wadapolooza team, the Loud and Live team. And, we started putting together a plan. First plan, move the stage, get it somewhere where people want to go, make it a destination, make it something people want to like carve out time to go and be
Hmm.
at.
Yeah.
And we accomplished that. I don't know if you saw any of the pictures,
Oh,
but
they
it
looked
was,
amazing.
yeah.
Amazing.
So it was set right next to Bayside, right there on the bay, right where all the athletes were swimming. Um, in between these palm trees, you had a stage. You had this big LED screen behind the stage. For those of you who weren't there and or just listening, and then they had a whole bunch of couches and chairs, like couches, like and like sofa type couches, like lounge chairs, just all in the grassy area where you could sit and listen, and the speakers were broadcasting out into the crowd. We were right in front of one of the vendor walks, so high visibility. The other thing I wanted to do was make sure that, okay, I want to give the podcast hosts time to book way in advance,
Hmm.
so that we can set it up and make sure that we have just a absolutely cranking schedule. And we did that about 2 weeks before Wadapalooza started. We gave them all the schedule. Hey, here's your time slots. Um, go, go get your guests. And they did. We had kettlebells and cocktails with John Woolley from Make What's Great Again and Nikki Brazier. We had Get With The Programming, Chase Ingram, Bill Grunler. We had Tommy Marquez with Talking Elite Fitness. We had
Coffee Pods and Wads,
yep,
Clydesdale,
yep.
Britt, I don't know, I forget her podcast.
Claire Bass.
Yeah. Claire,
Conver-
that's what I
con-
meant. Yeah.
yep, conversation with Claire. We had two-tone training. We had brute strength. We had some just amazing podcasts, and in turn, they brought the guests. We had Danielle Brandon up there 2 or 3 times, actually. Danielle Brandon was up there a lot. Um, Danielle Brandon did like 2 or 3 different episodes on different podcasts. We had Emma Carey, Matt Torres. I had Matt Frazier, uh, O'Keefe.
Hmm.
We had Sam Conway, Tyler Christoffel from Mayhem, Fee Sagafi, James Sprague. We had Craig Ritchie and Jasmine, Team Ritchie. We had Dan Bailey was up there. Just the who's who of people up there. Jedberg podcast was up there. I can't forget them. Jedberg, they knocked it out of the park. They brought Jesse Graff, American Ninja Warrior, as their co-host, and they had Julius Thomas, NFL tight end. I mean, just it was a really, really stacked card of people. On top of that, we also had Katrin and Annie did their own podcast up there. They did an open Q&A for a half hour.
Hmm.
We had Guido came up and did a seminar. We had Power Monkey. So we had Chris Hinshaw and Dave Durante. Yeah,
Yes, Dave Rent. Yeah, that's
I
him.
was like, it's Dave. Yeah, it's Dave Durante. Um, I had another name pop into my head, so got confused. But like all these different seminars and podcasts and CrossFit celebrities are up there. Not only that, but I said we need to find a way to announce it to the crowd so that they can actually make this a destination they want to go to. So
Hmm.
that they know when Katrin and Annie are going to be there, when they know when Matt Fraser is going to be there. So we put it on the app. The app had the entire schedule for the whole week for all the podcasts, all the seminars, so people could actually select,
That's awesome.
reserve their spots, set reminders, so that hey, 15 minutes before Matt Fraser goes on, they're going to get a reminder on their phone that says, hey, go to the experience stage for the Wex Appeal podcast with Matt Fraser and Matt O'Keefe. So you had just all these people coming up to the stage, and it became just the place to be. Ben Bergeron did a thing. But what it did with me hosting it is it kind of put me in a weird situation. Whereas, like Ben Bergeron, dude doesn't need me.
Mm.
He doesn't need me at all. But he walks up and he's like, "Hey, man, I think it would be a better idea if you just interviewed me, and we did it that way." And I'm like, "Okay." I mean, it's not it's your podcast. I mean, it's not my podcast, but I mean, whatever. So I ended up being the contact person for everything. So I'm running Q&As for the daughters. I'm interviewing Ben Bergeron. Oh, Don Fall, the CEO of CrossFit. How can I forget him? He came on my podcast, which blew my mind as well. But the notoriety of being the manager of the podcast stage for Wadapolooza kind of carried over to a couple other things. Hey, we need you to host the seminar for, Samsung. Okay, what's that? It's a Q&A with Justin Medeiros and Brooke Wells. Well, please twist my arm
Yes.
because that's amazing. Hey, we need you to host the champions panel.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you talk to Dylan, you can ask him, and he may not even notice that I did it, but I asked him at least 3 times, what exactly is my role in the champions panel? Okay, so you want me to moderate? You want me to moderate the champions panel? Okay. So just to be clear, you're gonna have me with a microphone asking all the champions questions.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay, so that's me doing that, right? Because I'm like, you don't know, like, thank you for your trust in me, but I'm not the MCs that you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a
Yep.
guy. I'm a guy that was asking you to go be an MC on the team stage to earn my stripes to work my way into the big leagues for the MC.
Mm-hmm.
And now you've got me up there with Ben Smith, Jason Khalipa, Camille LeBlanc-Bazinet, Catcher and Annie, Justin and Matt. And then I've got pictures of me standing there asking them questions, and they're all just staring at me. And I'm like, what is this?
Do you feel like laser beams like aiming at you, like just from their eyes?
I felt like I was gonna wake up, and it was all a dream.
Yeah.
Like it was definitely like I'd ask a question on a microphone, and I put the microphone down, and literally running through my head is like, who decided this was a good idea? Like those pictures, like one of these things does not belong.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's me. um, but I did it. It was amazing. It was fun. I mean, they're just people. I mean, at the end of the day, they're just people. You have to remember that they're just people. They just have done some really cool things.